AEW was back at the Aragon Ballroom in Chicago. This is part of their residency that is ongoing for the next few weeks. And last week, Hangman Page was his first Dynamite after winning the AEW World Championship. And I made the comment, I said it really didn't seem like they were setting anybody new up for Hangman coming out of All In outside of a potential rematch with Jon Moxley, which, pardon me, but doesn't exactly excite me. Was hoping we can move on from the Hangman Moxley stuff, especially after everything they did to each other in Texas. But that's what it felt like. Darby Allin is still hanging out in the shadows. But tonight affirmed what I thought last week, which is that we are, in fact, not yet done with Hangman Page and Jon Moxley, because the big announcement coming out of tonight's episode of Dynamite is that next week, in that same venue in Chicago, we are going to get a rematch from All In Texas. For the AEW World Heavyweight Championship, Hangman will be putting his title on the line, this time as the defending champion, against Jon Moxley. We're getting it again. Only this time, everybody is banned from ringside. The only people allowed in the ring are the two competitors and the referee. And that will be it. There will be no Young Bucks. There will be no Death Riders. There will be no Ops. There will be nobody. And we will get one-on-one Hangman and Moxley for the title. Why are they doing this? They're doing this because they want to pop a TV number next week. This is a big championship match that they can promote on Dynamite. And it's not a bad thing for us to get a world championship match on Dynamite every now and then. It adds some importance to the show. I just personally don't have a whole lot of interest in seeing Hangman and Moxley prolong this, but this is, I presume, going to be the final battle here between these two. They did have a great match at All In. Not taking away from the match that we saw a few weeks ago. But I also look at this and I just think, they threw everything at each other. They had a Texas death match. They did everything that you could possibly do to another wrestler in that match. All kinds of weapons. We had blood. We had beds of nails. We had everything. What more could they possibly give us next week? We'll find out because we're getting the match. Tony Khan made that match lickety-split. I mean, Hangman didn't even make it to the stage, and they already had the graphic up with the stipulation listed in the graphic. But that's the only thing I look at this and go, man, how do you follow up a match like the one that they had in Arlington, 10, 11 days ago, whatever it was. But that is now official for next Wednesday night. And the other thing we also had on a few things on this show tonight, which I thought overall was a very average episode of Dynamite. But we had Will Osprey, who was not on the show last week. We had not seen him since he and Swerve beat the Young Bucks at All In. He was on the show tonight. There's been a lot of discourse around Osprey and his status going forward and his health. Osprey comes to the ring tonight to make an announcement about his future because he is injured. And the word on the street has been that he's injured enough that he might actually have to miss Forbidden Door next month. The one thing that Osprey all but confirmed tonight is that he will be at Forbidden Door. He intends to make it back for Forbidden Door, but when you listen to the words that came out of his mouth as he explained his physical state and what the status of his injury is, it was a very perplexing segment. I will just say that before we get into exactly what he said here. But he has made it his goal to be back in time for All In, which of course, or Forbidden Door, which of course is taking place in London. I can understand him not wanting to miss that show. But when you have an injury, the likes of which he described tonight, I don't know how wise that is to push yourself, if it is a legitimate injury, to come back in 1 month. That seems very ambitious. We also had the announcement tonight of a World Tag Team Title Eliminator Tournament to crown new number one contenders for the AEW World Tag Team titles. The winners will get a championship match in London at Forbidden Door. They have not given us any brackets yet. What we did have tonight was the first match to kick this tournament off, which involved FTR and Jet Speed. So they kicked us off here in the tournament. They also confirmed, unfortunately, that there is another team that was supposed to be included in this tournament, and they will no longer be included because of an injury. On Collision last week, they had another one of the, I think it was like a 6-man tag or an 8-man tag for $200,000 or whatever this nonsense was. And the Guns were involved. Now, Colton and Austin Gunn just came back in the Casino Gauntlet match at All In. They had not been on television since February. Nobody was hurt. There was no injury. They just were not on TV. So they finally make their return. And then in the course of that match last week on Collision, Colton hurt his knee. He went up for a move. He was in the ring with Big Bill. And again, it didn't look like anything out of the ordinary, but I guess just the way he landed, he immediately grabbed his knee and he rolled out of the ring. And it seemed pretty clear that he was hurt. And then people in the venue were taking pictures of him being, carried out and escorted out. So you just sort of hope in that situation that, he won't be out for too long, but it sounds like he might be out for a while because they mentioned that Colton Gunn is hurt. The Guns will not be a part of the tournament like they originally intended. I saw Sean Ross Sapp had an item that said Fightful has learned that when that Colton Gunn was originally supposed to participate in the Tag Team Eliminator tournament, AEW wanted to give it time to see if he can make the tournament. It is looking unlikely, and they are making changes internally. And as we heard on the show tonight, obviously those changes have been made. So it's just, it's unfortunate timing. I mean, you can't say, oh, the guy's hurt again. Again, he didn't miss all those months because he was hurt. They just weren't used. I mean, there may have been injury issues in the past. I don't know offhand, but now he's hurt and all of a sudden the Guns are back on the shelf and, it sucks for them. So whatever the severity of the injury is, hopefully he's not out for too long. But the Hurt Syndicate are the tag team champions. And the most interesting thing to happen on the show tonight involved the Hurt Syndicate. It was the Hurt Syndicate and MJF, who seemed to all be on the same page and everything seemed to be going well. And now not so much, all of a sudden. MJF looks to be on the outs. Not official yet, but he looks to be on the outs with the Hurt Syndicate. MJF was all over this show tonight. MJF was in at least 3, maybe 4 segments on the show. And I don't recall a single mention of him being in the new Happy Gilmore movie, which drops this Friday on Netflix, because he's been doing publicity and podcasts. He's been, making the rounds. I think there was a red carpet premiere the other night. The only thing I could guess is that it's on Netflix. It's a Netflix movie. They don't want to be promoting it on HBO Max. That's my guess, because otherwise it really doesn't make any sense. I don't know why you wouldn't want to mention that. The fact that he's going to be in this, this big sequel. Even when Queen of the Ring came out, they were doing promotion for Queen of the Ring. They just weren't doing promotion for Camille being in Queen of the Ring. But they were doing promotion for that movie. So that was a little strange. I think I may have hit on the reason why, but I thought that was a little odd. But this was a perfectly average episode of Dynamite tonight. We had one really good match, which was that tag team match between FTR and Jet Speed. That was a very good match. And then we had some solid ones. But, I mean, this is AEW. So they go out there and give you kick-ass matches on most weeks. Tonight we had one really good one and a bunch of solid matches. And not much else to speak of, really, outside of what we got with MJF and the Hurt Syndicate, which, again, continues to be the most interesting thing on the show. And I have a sense of where things could potentially be headed next week, which we will get into when we talk about the end of the show. This is your AEW Dynamite review. It is Wednesday, July 23rd, 2025. I am the Solomonster. Thank you for hanging out with me here on a Wednesday night. Like and subscribe. Super chats are open. And any messages that come in, I know we had a bunch already. I'll be reading them a little bit later on here in the stream, as we always do. And if we can get the likes up around 400, we will do our Be the Booker segment later in the stream. So hit that like button. Let's take it from the top. Open the show. Renee Paquette is in the back. And she approaches Hangman Adam Page because he was headed to the ring for the opening match. He was wrestling Wheeler Yuta on this show, which was a very exciting announcement when they made it several days ago. And I'm waiting for them to make more announcements about what we could expect on the show tonight, We had two things up until maybe 2 hours before showtime. We had two things announced on this show: Hangman Page against Wheeler Yuta, and Timeless Toni Storm against Billie Starkz. And that was it. And this is part of Tony Khan's new approach. He likes to wait until the day of the show, almost right up until showtime, to make announcements about what you can expect on the show, because he believes it adds excitement to the show. It could lead to more people wanting to tune into the show, I guess is the idea, which is kind of a weird concept. I mean, you would think if you just announce even a partial, and I say partial, more than just one or two things, but like even a partial card, 3-4 things on the show that you think people are going to want to see, they'll tune in. But he's got a different mindset now when it comes to promoting these shows. And we only had the two announcements coming into tonight. But Renee wants to know, why are you taking this match here tonight with Wheeler Yuta? And Hangman brings up the Death Riders attacking Colt Cabana, his good friend, on Collision this past week. If you didn't see that angle, Colt Cabana was randomly doing commentary on Collision. So he got jumped by the Death Riders. They beat him bloody. They wrapped a chain around his neck, hung him over the top rope, and choked him. And this was a message that Jon Moxley was sending to Hangman Page. He was the sacrificial lamb. So he brings up that incident, says he wants revenge for tonight. MJF walks up to Hangman, his first of several segments here on this show. And he said he's attempting to goad old Seabiscuit here into giving him a title shot. And Hangman shut him down and said that if you wanted a shot, you've got to either earn it or you've got to cash in your contract. But he knows that MJF won't do either because he's a child, he's a facade, he's a gutless coward. And off to the ring he went, and we had the parting shot here of MJF peeking back at Hangman and not looking very happy about what he was just told. And so they opened with Hangman Adam Page one-on-one against Wheeler Yuta. And Page came down to the ring. He had the chain in his hand. We've seen him with that chain recently. That chain's been getting a lot of use. Yuta attacked Hangman during his entrance. Page, though, quickly gained control and hit his springboard lariat to the floor. And then he chucked Yuta into the barricade. Back inside, Page lit him up with chops and a Death Valley driver for a near fall. Yuta raked the eyes. He went to go charge, but he ran into a lariat and then a buckshot lariat, which is what gave Hangman the win. This was a very quick, very decisive win, which is exactly what it should have been. Nothing more, nothing less. Lasted less than 4 minutes. After the match, Page grabbed the chain and he cracked Yuta with it. Now he's throwing punches and bunches at this guy and he busts him open. So Yuta comes up, he's bleeding from the head. Page faked like he was going to hang him by the chain around his throat over the top rope, but he stopped short. And again, that's what Moxley did to Cabana on Collision. That's what Hangman did to Moxley at All In. But he stops short and he screams at Yuta. He says, "See, no one is coming to save you. You're all alone." And Page left with the chain. It's Shark Week this week. And TBS has been promoting, even tonight during the show, they were promoting Shark Week here up and down this program. TBS has been plugging it all week long. I would say at this point, Wheeler Yuta is just above Shark Boy as far as credibility goes. That's pretty much where he lands, I would say, on the scale at this point. So this had to be quick, it had to be dominant, and it had to be decisive. Hangman needed to come out and be pissed about what happened to his boy last week. So again, this was what it needed to be. It was just a way also to get Hangman a match on TV. You want to get your world champion as visible on the show as you possibly can. I mean, we live at a time here in wrestling where that isn't always the case. We have had many world champions who barely show up on TV. So it actually is kind of nice to have a world champion with the actual belt showing up consistently on TV every week. And it was pretty clear to me even before anything was made official later in the show, that we were building to a rematch. We just didn't know when. We were building to a rematch with Hangman and with Jon Moxley. But we got this vignette a couple of segments later in the back with Jon Moxley. He was back there with Marina Shafir. He said Hangman fought the fight of his life at All In, but now he finds himself in the position that they all do. Get up and do it again. And do it again, and do it again tomorrow. Him, he lost the match. Said no reason to be a bitch about it. He's ready to go again, as he's sure Hangman is. Avoiding a rematch isn't something world champions do. The credits don't roll. This movie don't end. A mistake was made, and he says that he will fix it one way or another. We know who the Hangman Paige was who rode into Arlington, and by the end of tonight, we will find out who the Hangman Paige was that rode out. And indeed, we will come back around to this later in the show, because that's when they close with the angle and the announcement of what's coming next week. We had the Ring of Honor Women's World Champion Athena backstage with her minion, Billie Starkz, who said that AEW stands for Athena Elite Wrestling. It's fine with me. I'm okay with that. It's about time. It's about 3 years overdue. Stark said that she was going to beat Toni Storm tonight, but Athena corrected her and said that you have to take her out. And Athena says that she holds the pen with all the power, and tonight she would cash in if she wanted to on Toni. Up next, we had the best match on the entire show. FTR taking on Speedball Mike Bailey and Kevin Knight. This was a first-round match in the Tag Team Title Contenders Tournament. Stokely Hathaway came out with FTR on crutches after the attack last week by Adam Copeland, the spear that he took. FTR tried to shatter machine on Mike Bailey very early here, but Kevin Knight made the save. Bailey nearly got a schoolboy for a 2. Jet Speed then hit dueling dives, and Bailey came up limping after that. After a commercial break, Knight fought off the Powerplex attempt. Bailey laid out Wheeler with a top rope Hurricane Rana. We got dueling missile drop kicks from Jet Speed that led to a pendulum DDT by Kevin Knight on Dax Harwood for 2. Knight with a splash on Harwood at the same time that Bailey hit a springboard moonsault outside on Wheeler. Harwood responded with a dragon screw in the ropes, and he was focusing on that leg back inside. Dax locked on a figure 4 around the ring post after this, but that left him exposed to Bailey, who came over and started throwing some kicks. So back inside, we got more dragon screws to Kevin Knight. Harwood sank in the sharpshooter. At the same time, we had Cash Wheeler locking one in on Mike Bailey on the floor outside. Knight, though, got the ropes on the inside. So then we got the first part of the Powerplex by FTR. That connected. That was the Superplex. But on the follow-up splash by Wheeler, Kevin Knight got the knees up, which allowed Bailey to hit a shooting star press for a 2 count. They went to a second commercial break, and we come back from the second break. Bailey hits a wild corkscrew springboard moonsault right in front of the announce desk. Bailey rolled through a shooting star press attempt back inside, fired a punt kick, though, at Harwood, followed by a standing shooting star double knees for a near fall. Knight made the he made the tag to hit the Doomsday elevated drop kick that they do. Wheeler broke the count. Knight tried the UFO splash, but Harwood got the knees up and then the inside cradle, only for Knight to kick out at 2. Harwood tried a bounce back power bomb. Knight got a roll up off that and a near fall. Bailey tried to fly in with a Hurricane Rana. Harwood was successful with the bounce back power bomb. Knight and Harwood, they traded pin attempts. Stokely Hathaway, now I mentioned he's on crutches. So he's standing out there, he's on his crutches. And as these two are trading pin attempts here, Stokely holds the crutch out. And Harwood is able to hold on to it for added leverage. And they steal the pin. FTR wins. FTR advances in the tournament. After the match is over, Tony Schiavone reluctantly, because he's no fan of FTR. Tony Schiavone gets into the ring for an interview. He asked about what Adam Copeland did last week. And Stokely, who was getting booed out of the building, he was getting tremendous heat here. said Copeland belongs in prison. He has no business putting his hands on him. He called Copeland a loser, a horrible human being, and a cancer to AEW, which led to Copeland coming out on the ramp with a mic. He said, "Oh, I forgot. I'm only allowed within a certain distance of FTR, but I made a business deal." Says he made a business deal with certain gentlemen who can do what he can't do. And it just so happens that they are in the business of hurting people. For a second there, honestly, for a split second, I was thinking the APA was walking out. I thought the APA was coming out, some old buddies here. Although JBL and Copeland have a history we don't need to get into. But it was not the APA. Instead, the Hurt Syndicate walked out. MVP and Copeland, they shook hands on the ramp. Lashley and Benjamin, they removed their tag team titles. And they hit the ring to start brawling with FTR until referee spilled out. The brawl continued through over the ringside area here. It ended with FTR. They were down on the ground. Copeland then hit the ring. He was going to try to spear Stokely, but he, I guess, threw one of the security geeks in the line of fire, and so Copeland speared him instead. And Stokely bailed. Very good match. Very good match here. There were a bunch of near falls with Dax that were a little too close for comfort. You know, he waited as long as he possibly could, but some of them it was to the point where it looked like the referee had to hold up a little bit. So there were some very near falls here in this match. Without knowing who the other teams are in the tournament, because they did not tell us. We will not know until maybe Collision who the other teams are. FTR against the Hurt Syndicate, even before they did what they did here at the end, just seemed like the likely conclusion here. Like, FTR needs to win this tournament, and I believe they will. And then we get FTR and the Hurt Syndicate because the winners are going to get their title match in London at Forbidden Door, so that we already know when the championship match is taking place. And honestly, that will be the first time where I will feel like Shelton Benjamin and Bobby Lashley honestly feel like they could lose those tag team titles. At no point since they have won those titles. And when was that? It was probably November at this point, right? November, December, when they won those championships. In all of this time, I can't think of another match. I can't think of a match that these guys have had in all that time where it felt like, oh, you know what? Okay, these guys are on their level. Maybe they could do a title change here. Like, at Dynasty or Double or Nothing or any of these events. So FTR wins the tournament. They go to Forbidden Door. This is where I think it is very likely, frankly, that we are going to see a tag team title change, especially when you consider that we know at some point we're getting a reunion of Cope and Christian. We know this already. And Toronto at All Out seems like a good time to do it. Copeland's still going after FTR. He still wants to get revenge on them for what they did to him at Dynasty. Christian, we haven't seen in a couple of weeks. We haven't seen him since Texas. So now the stage is set to do a reunion because they both have issues with FTR. When they do that match, it will likely be for the tag team titles. You can get the titles on FTR in London and then make it a championship match. So not only are you getting a Cope and Christian reunion, but in going after FTR, they're actually challenging for the tag team titles. I feel like that's the likely destination here. Now, the Copeland Hurt Syndicate stuff was a little weird. Like, where did this come from? Right? But in the back later, they explained it in an interview with Renee. Before they could answer her question, though, MJF showed up. Because when they came out to do what they did to FTR, there was no MJF. Benjamin, Lashley, MVP were out there, not MJF. So here in this segment, he walks into the room and he says, "That's a great question, Renee." Says all of a sudden they're buddies with Cope. Says it took him months to join this group. Where the hell were they when he was nose to nose with Hangman? MVP shut him down and said, "We're in the business of hurting people." And they made a business arrangement with Copeland. MJF said, "That's cute, but how about you get in the business of helping me win back my world title?" So Shelton Benjamin looks at Renee and asks her to leave the room, vacate the room. At which point Lashley grabs MJF and shoves him up against a locker. Like a fucking bully in high school. Throws him up against a locker and he tells him they don't need to help him with shit. They are not his lackeys. Every week it's I. And as far as he's concerned, he wants him out of the Hurt Syndicate. And he flashed the thumbs down sign. And then he left. And MJF looks at Shelton and goes, Shelton. And Shelton just shakes his head and he walks off. And MVP shakes his head at MJF and also leaves. And Max was very upset by what just happened here. And so there you go, right? This all ties in now. They have this tournament to crown number one contenders for Forbidden Door. FTR goes to London. You do the match. You now have the next few weeks. If they are going to give MJF the boot officially, which hasn't happened yet, but if they're going to officially give him the boot from the Hurt Syndicate or put a beat down on him or whatever ends up happening, you do that in the next few weeks. By the time you get to Forbidden Door in that tag team title match, that's where MJF could factor into the match and screw Lashley and Benjamin out of the tag team titles. He's the catalyst. He's the one. He provides the distraction or he interferes, whatever it is that he does. It leads directly into the Hurt Syndicate losing the championships because they're going to want to protect them in some way. If they are going to drop those titles, especially to another heel team, it's not going to be a clean win for FTR. Okay, that's not gonna happen. There's going to be some kind of fuckery that goes on. And now all of a sudden that there's trouble in paradise here in the ranks of this group, you can see what that will end up being. It will end up being MJF. And then you can go on to do MJF and Bobby Lashley in a match in Toronto at All Out. You know, that could be an All Out match. But I think now things are starting to tie together as far as where this is headed. It feels like Lashley and Benjamin are nearing the end of their run. And MJF is going to play a role in that. Now after this, Tony Schiavone was in the ring to welcome Will Osprey down to the ring. We have not seen or heard from Will Osprey since Texas, which wasn't, I mean, it was 11 days ago. But there's been a lot of chatter about his physical state. Is he banged up or is he injured? Those are two totally different things. Is he going to be a Forbidden Door or is he not going to be a Forbidden Door? Osprey gets into the ring and Schiavone asked him not only about his tag team match, but about what the Death Riders did to him in the main event. They did that injury angle where they put the chair around his neck and stomped on it. Same thing they did to Samoa Joe to write him off TV. Osprey said Tony Khan had no idea he was showing up today. Claims that he flew himself over from London and he asked for 5 minutes to go out and address the fans. Osprey said that he's been struggling with his neck for the last 10 months and said that he never told medical because he wanted to make sure AEW got over the finish line at All In. Said that he made promises to Swerve Strickland and the fans that he would do his part to bring back the AEW World Championship to AEW and away from the Death Riders. And he said that he's proud to say they did that. Osprey said that after what the Death Riders did to him at All In, he was rushed to the hospital where he learned that he has 2 herniated discs that are pressing on his spine. The good news, he says, is that the doctors tell him that it is treatable. It is a very treatable thing. With therapy and treatment, fingers crossed, he says he should be back by Forbidden Door. Now, he says 2 herniated discs, and I'm thinking, oh, this is bad. You know, we're not going to be seeing Will Osprey for a while. And then he goes, but I hope to be back by Forbidden Door. And I'm sitting here going, what? Come again? He thanks Swerve Strickland for everything that he's done for him, and he says that it was an honor to fight by his side. The moment he's feeling healthy, it's eye for an eye in regards to the Death Riders. And as Osprey made his way up the ramp, Swerve met him on stage with a hug, and the two of them posed for the crowd. 2 herniated discs in his neck and back in a month. I mean, the way he was acting out there, even just his demeanor, if you just looked at him, the expression on his face, you thought this is not going to be good. This is this is going to be one of those announcements where he's going to be out for a long time. I don't know where fact and fiction break here as far as the nature of his injury. Does he really have 2 herniated discs in his neck? Is that exaggerated and he is hurt, but not quite that badly? I don't know. It's entirely possible that it's legit. He's out there saying, I've been hurt for 10 months. My neck has been giving me issues for almost a year. And think about this. Think of the matches that this guy has gone out there and had, including in Texas, over those 10 months. He hasn't missed a step. You would never know that Will Osprey was hurt. He goes out there. He always performs at a high level. He has some of the best matches in the entire company. And if everything here is on the up and up, the idea that he did that with 2 herniated discs in his neck is crazy. If he knew it and didn't say anything, that's just stupid. And that makes it even crazier. But again, where fact and fiction start and stop here, we don't know. But if he really is that hurt, coming back in 4 weeks seems very unwise. Now, he didn't necessarily say back in the ring. Maybe it's just an appearance. He absolutely should be at Forbidden Door. But I mean, if he's that hurt, I don't want to see him in the ring. I want him to get well. Heal up. You know, if anybody deserves it, it's him. He's been putting the work in this entire time. On the podcast, I mentioned the tweet he put out a few weeks ago where he talked about his travel schedule. We're halfway, a little over halfway through the year. And he's had 400 flights. I'm sorry, not 400, 400 flights, my God. 68 flights, 400 hours of airtime, and like all these crazy stats. And I'm like, so whatever injuries and bumps and bruises he has is just compounded by this crazy travel because he still lives in the UK. And so it's almost weekly flights back and forth from the UK to the US. It's going to take a toll on you. So if he needs time off, I would rather him just take time off and come back when you're as close to 100% as you can be. Anything else to me is crazy. So I hope he isn't that hurt. But if he is, I don't want to see him back at Forbidden Door. Yeah, you want to come out and wave, that's fine. But like, dude, you don't have to get back in the ring anytime soon. Get well first. And then come back. So that was not the payoff to that announcement that I was expecting. 400 flights, he's going for that Hogan schedule. Yeah, well, Hogan, hey, always remember, Hogan said 1 year he traveled 400 days. When you factor in the time zone difference between, Japan and the US, he actually traveled 400 days in a year. Using some of that Hogan math. Renee was backstage with Willow Nightingale, who said that she has spent so much time feuding with the Death Riders and Chris Statlander. But there's a lot of good going on in AEW, like a new AEW World Champion in Hangman. Lots of new girls on the roster for her to mix it up with, like Tekla. She had Tekla last week pinned in that 100,000. I can't even keep track, by the way, of these money matches. I think we had a $200,000 8-man tag on Collision. We had a $400,000 match a few months ago. Remember the Beast Mortos was in that match? There have been, I think, a couple of $100,000 match. It's just so random. But there was another money match, and here she's saying that she had Tekla beat in that match, and she had that money taken away from her. And she said, "Is that Spidey sense tingling?" Says, "That's me. I'll see you in the ring." And the people in the building popped, but there was no other appearance by Willow on this show, or Tekla for that matter. That was the lone Willow Nightingale sighting on this show, which is great. I'm a fan of Willow. We need more Willow on these shows. But we didn't have Willow. We had Timeless Toni Storm, the AEW Women's World Champion, against Billie Starkz. This was an eliminator match with Athena watching on up in one of the opera boxes. I think the same box that Toni was in last week. Billie was in control going into a commercial. Chops from Storm led to a Thez press that got the crowd amped up. Starkz ran into a sit-out choke bomb for 2. Billie avoided the TCM chicken wing, got a face buster and a neck breaker over the knee, only for a near fall. Storm tried a backslide, but turned it into a fisherman suplex for 2. Starkz, though, was up first to fire off a kick. Toni rolled, rather, she rolled in with some sweet chic music. Looked for Storm Zero. Billie, though, got a roll up. Starkz wanted her swanton bomb. Toni got the knees up, sank in the chicken wing, and got the submission win. After the match, Starkz blasted Toni from behind with the AEW Women's World title. And then they had this great shot, too, where you saw Athena in the background as Billie was standing there. And there's Athena up in the balcony with a big smirk on her face. And Billie Starkz looks up and she starts motioning like, come down, come down. And Athena exits to go make her way down because she's possibly going to cash in her guaranteed title match contract. Aubrey Edwards gets into it with Billie Starkz. That leads to Billie tossing Aubrey out of the ring. Athena comes in, hits Storm with the contract binder. And actually, she smacked her really more in the chest with it, not the head. Toni rolled outside. She fell victim to the double knees up against the ring steps before Athena put her back in the ring, and this time she clobbered her right in the head with that contract case. Athena was about to sign the contract because the way it works here in AEW is you've got to actually sign it on the spot. Then it becomes official, right? That was the whole thing with Christian Cage, where when he started teasing that he would cash in his contract earlier this year, he held it up. Remember, Kip Sabian came and stole it from him before he could sign it. That's like the one little wrinkle that AEW, put into this that separates it from Money in the Bank. Got to sign the contract on the spot. So before she could do so, Alex Windsor's music hits. I was confused. I did not know who was coming out. And evidently many people in the crowd did not either, because if you go back and listen to the reaction, there was no big pop or anything. People were like looking like, who is this? It was Alex Windsor. Now, Alex Windsor is somebody who has made sporadic appearances over the last couple of years in AEW, very inconsistent. For all intents and purposes, she made her official debut in the Gauntlet match at All In. There are a lot of people who don't know who she is, or they don't know what her music is, right? She's still new. So that was kind of a funny reaction as she was coming out here to make the save. And they indicated that she would be challenging Athena soon for her Ring of Honor Women's World Championship, hence the reason that Alex Windsor came out here to make the save. So she took out Athena with a headbutt and a discus lariat to Billie Starkz, and the heels retreated. The match itself was solid enough. I know it was an eliminator match, but I mean, Toni Storm just handed Mercedes Moné the first loss of her AEW career. She was not going to wrestle Billie Starkz on Dynamite and lose to fucking Billie Starkz. So there was no doubt about the outcome. We've had eliminator matches before where the champion falls and then, right, that person ends up challenging for the title. Billie Starkz is not the one challenging for the title. That's Athena's story. So Billie was never going to win this match here. Toni dodges the first cash-in attempt. I guess the question now is, how many times are they going to do this? How many times will we see attempted cash-ins by Athena? I am hoping that the cash-in, when it happens, is done in advance. And I know she's a heel, but that doesn't mean just because she's a heel that she can't call her shot. Not every heel has to operate the same way in a perfect little box under the same heel rules. We have 2 heels, by the way, with contracts, MJF being the other. And MJF is a hell of a lot more likely to cash in after a match on somebody than Athena is. I say that because I really hope we get a proper match between Toni and Athena. And I take nothing for granted here. So what I mean by that is, if Athena were to cash in, dubiously, right? And it's a quick 60-second thing, and let's say she wins the championship, right? Yes, it could possibly lead then to a longer match between the two. But I thought we were going to get a series of matches between Mercedes and Athena, and we didn't. And it was one and done. So I don't trust that that's going to happen. So my sincere hope is that when she does cash in, and maybe Toni gets under her skin, however they do it, but she calls her shot and says, you know what? I'm going to cash in this contract, and I know exactly when I'm going to do it. I don't need to jump you from behind, right? I'm the forever champion in Ring of Honor, almost 1,000 days. Nobody can beat me, even though Mercedes already did, but we'll forget that happened. Nobody can beat me. And then call her shot for whatever the next pay-per-view is, or an episode of Dynamite, whatever it might be. So we get a longer, proper match, which I think the two of them would kill it. But I don't want to see them in a fucking 90-second match after Toni Storm just wrestled somebody else. To me, that's fucking lame. I'm so tired of this cash-in concept anyway. We've had so many of them. I mean, they're all coming up right now around the same time, you know, between the two companies, that I'm just kind of over the whole thing, to be honest with you. But yeah, I want more of a proper match between these two. That's what I'm hoping for. So if they are going to tease it a few more times, I hope in the end we at least get that out of it. If Gunther ever wins Money in the Bank, he is calling his shot. He is. He absolutely. Actually, he's a great example of what I'm talking about, where not every heel has to operate under the same chicken shit heel rules. You're absolutely right. If Gunther ever won Money in the Bank, he's not cashing in like a bitch. You know, most people cash in, and look, it's within the rules. But when you cash in that way, you're cashing in like a bitch. He would not cash in like a bitch. You're absolutely right. So, and I like that. I like when you have heels that just don't operate under the same rules as everybody else. You know, I think you could fit Athena into that same category. As dominant as she has been in Ring of Honor, she should be confident in her ability to go in there in a regular match and beat Toni Storm. No need to sneak up on the woman. We had Swerve Strickland one-on-one with Hechicero. Don Callis is managing Hechicero because Hechicero is part of the Don Callis family. So he does this thing now where he does this very over-the-top introduction on the stage for Hechicero. And he says, better than El Santo, better than Mil Mascaras, better than Bandito. Es muy bueno. Yo soy Hechicero, which literally translates to I am Hechicero. And he is definitely not Hechicero. So when he said that, I popped. He popped me with that line. They wrestle for a little bit. They go to break. Coming out of picture-in-picture, we got a slugfest between the two until Hechicero hits a step-up knee and a slam, only for a 1 count. Swerved, he popped right up. And he dared Hechicero to do it again. Strickland went up top, hit a 450 splash, only for a 2 count. Hechicero rolled through a suplex. He caught a cross arm breaker into a La Magistral for another near fall. Strickland kicked free. He managed a rolling flatliner. He went up top again. Lance Archer, though, hits the ring with Josh Alexander, and they shoved Strickland off the ropes. That led to a rare disqualification in an AEW match. Brody King and Bandito, they hit the ring to make the save, and they brawled to the back with Archer and Hechicero. Kazuchika Okada, though, in his suit, appears in the ring behind Swerve, and he cracks him in the back with a steel chair. They shot the first segment last week to set up a future match between these two, so this is just a continuation of that. Okada wanted a tombstone on the chair. Swerve escaped. He fired off an uppercut headbutt. Strickland wanted to Pillmanize Okada's neck. So he wrapped the chair around his neck, and he was sitting there. And he wanted to give him a house call kick with the chair wrapped around Okada's head. But before he could hit the kick, Okada very quickly flipped the chair off his head, and he escaped with his life. He lives to fight another day. This was an okay match. It just never got out of first gear, especially given what both these men are capable of. What I've seen of Hechicero, he's very good. Swerve is awesome, but it just never got out of first gear, which is just as well, I guess, given the lame DQ finish that we got here at the end. But Hechicero, I believe, is next in line for a shot at Bandito and the Ring of Honor World Championship. And then, of course, Swerve. You can't beat Swerve right now. He's about to challenge for the unified title. So there was really no way out of this match other than to do a DQ or a no contest. I don't know that most people would have been expecting anything different than what we got here. They aired highlights of Ricochet and the Gates of Agony winning their $200,000 tag team match on Collision. They come back live. They were interviewed by Alicia Atout in the back. Ricochet told her to refer to them simply as GOA. Ricochet and GOA. Ricochet said they are now $200,000 richer, which they will invest in their quest for gold. How exactly? I was wondering, he's going to invest it in their quest for gold. Are they going to upgrade their gym equipment? How does one invest that much money in their quest for gold, for Trios Gold in AEW? Are they greasing some palms in the back? Can't grease Tony Khan's palms. He's got more money than, everybody in the company put together. So, what are you going to take his own money and give it back to him? I don't know. He didn't explain exactly what he meant by that, but I guess it sounded good. And he said that one way or another, they will respect them or fear them. Coming to the ring after this, with his world championship contract in hand, MJF. I told you he was all over this show. So he came out by himself, no Hurt Syndicate, came down to the ring, and he said he doesn't need Bobby Lashley to get back his world title. He doesn't need Bob. And as far as Hangman is concerned, he's a hypocrite. MJF said he will beat Hangman in the ring fair and square, as he doesn't need the contract to do so. Mark Briscoe's music hits. He walks out on stage. He's got a mic. And Briscoe said that much like MJF's kosher pickle, he'll try to keep this short. Briscoe said MJF stole that Casino Gauntlet win from him at All In, so he wants him in the ring next week right here in Chicago as the residency continues. MJF said no. And then he mocked Briscoe and his accent, and he mocked him, saying that if he was supposed to win the gauntlet, he would have. But he always chokes when the pressure is on. MJF is a generational talent, the most complete pro wrestler in the world today, and from the bottom of his heart, Briscoe sucks. As does everyone from the Midwest. MJF isn't stupid. He knows everybody loves Mark Briscoe, and he knows exactly why. He says Briscoe's got a wonky eye, he's got missing teeth, and a southern accent that makes everybody feel all warm and fuzzy on the inside. But not even Briscoe's biggest fans think that he's a top guy or anywhere close to MJF's level. MJF said Briscoe is the circus clown they parade around for cheap laughs and cheap pops. The fans don't respect him, and he says that he knew a guy from Delaware that the fans did appreciate. That guy would have been worth his time. How depressing it must be for Briscoe to wake up every morning looking at his family and friends in the eye, knowing they respected his brother Jay more. And Briscoe hit the ring. MJF ran for his life to the back. Again, he did this a few weeks ago. At this point, I just think, obviously he's trying to get under Mark Briscoe's skin. That's the whole point here. But at this point, it's just, it is cheap heat. And I don't know, like, he already did this before. So now they're going back to the Jay Briscoe well again. So, he did that. And I'm like, do we need to constantly kind of, beat people over the head with this? But they closed the show, and I'm going to talk about MJF again in a second, but they closed the show. We're up to the main event already. This was the main event of this show. Mark Briscoe was in the main event of this show against Claudio Castagnoli. And just by virtue of where these men are usually slotted on these shows, I thought I was watching Collision. I said, really? They said, this is our main event of the evening. I said, oh, okay. Doesn't feel like a Dynamite main event, but okay. So we got a stiff chop and uppercut battle here right when the bell sounded. Briscoe won the exchange, only briefly though. Briscoe blocked a corner charge. They traded overhand chops on the apron until Briscoe pulled Claudio to the floor. Claudio avoided the baseball slide. He caught Briscoe incoming with a giant swing then into the barricade. And things went to commercial at that point. Back from break, as Briscoe dove off the top, Claudio met him with a huge uppercut. Then they zoom in on the crowd, and on the floor level, again, it's not a big building, they're on the floor level in the back of the crowd, standing right there, watching, is Darby Allin. It's Sting. Sting Jr. is in the crowd. And Claudio sees this, and this is very distracting to Claudio. Distracting enough that Briscoe is able to take control and hit an exploder. Claudio got booted outside, where Briscoe followed with a somersault tope, hit the Cactus Jack elbow off the announce desk. There was a running blockbuster off the barricade by Briscoe. Claudio rolled back inside, where Briscoe met him with a froggy bow, only for 2. Briscoe wanted a J driller. Claudio backed him into the corner, only for Briscoe to fire off an uppercut chop. Claudio raked the eyes. He crotched Briscoe on the top, and then he delivered an avalanche body slam. You don't see that too often, right? We see avalanche suplexes. We see avalanche everything. Fall away slams, Spanish flies. This was just, he muscled the guy up and held him there and fucking body slammed him, off the top. So then we got anvil elbows from Claudio into a neutralizer attempt. Briscoe, though, avoided it. Only Bryce Remsburg stepped in between the two of them. That led to Claudio getting an eye poke and then a charging uppercut. The second attempt at a neutralizer was countered into an inside cradle, and Briscoe got the flash pin. Mark Briscoe wins the main event here on Dynamite, a much-needed win for Mark Briscoe, who should win more often given how popular he is. He really should. After the match was over, Marina Shafir hit the ring for a chop block. Moxley joined with Wheeler Yuta. Moxley said that Hangman isn't the champion yet. What? And said that no one should get too comfortable. So then Hangman Page is back out. He power walks to the ring. He just gets right into the ring. He's walking right into the Lion's Den. He gets into the ring. He walks right up to Moxley, face to face. He said that when Moxley said Hangman didn't want Texas death, they both knew that was a lie. When Moxley said Paige wouldn't do it again and again and again, right, if he won the title, he might believe that. So Paige is going to prove it to him. He's going to prove to him how much he really wants it. And he says next week, it's going to be you and me, one more time, Hangman Page and Jon Moxley in a rematch for the AEW World Championship, but this time I'm the champion, you're the challenger, so you're going to play by my rules. You're going to play by Hangman's rules. Everyone except them and the referee are banned from ringside. Paige said, I already know your answer is yes, so I'll see you next week, dumbass. And then he power walked out of the ring right back to the stage. And he barely made it to the stage. And then on those 2 screens on the side of the stage, they already had the graphic prepped and ready to go. Hangman on one side, Jon Moxley on the other. World Championship next week. It even had the stipulation. Everybody banned from ringside. Listed in the actual graphic. I'm telling you, Toni, man. He works quick. He's got fucking Photoshop open on his laptop in front of him back there at Gorilla, and then boom, that graphic is up. So they want to pop a big number next week. They want to have a big attraction for Dynamite next week. They want to do a big number. Every now and then we get a big world championship match in the main event on one of these shows, right? We had it with Moxley at least once. I know many months ago they did the rematch with him and Cope after they had that terrible finish to Revolution. They did the rematch on Dynamite. I think that was the match where Moxley had the frickin' spike, right? Spiked the board embedded in his back. Just gross shit. So they want to pop a number on TV next week. Again, these two, they threw everything you can imagine at each other in that Texas death match not even 2 weeks ago. It's hard for me to imagine. Yes, they can go out there and have a really good wrestling match, but it's hard for me to imagine what more they could do that we didn't already see from them at the pay-per-view. But we're getting the rematch next week. I want to point out that Mark Briscoe asked MJF for a match in Chicago next week, and MJF said no. Now, MJF has that contract. Hangman was very disrespectful to him tonight. MJF had a look on his face like he wasn't very happy about being embarrassed and upstaged in that opening segment by Hangman. So he's got a bone to pick with him. Will he attempt to cash in that contract next week? I believe he will. And the fact that he said no to a match against Mark Briscoe, coupled with the fact that he again invoked the name of his dead brother. If I were Mark Briscoe and this man yet again invoked the name of my dead brother, I know what I would do. If he comes out to try to cash that contract in, I'm going to make sure he doesn't. Or he doesn't successfully. But I don't think they're going to waste it. I think he might try to cash in, but before he can sign the contract, Mark Briscoe is going to show up. Because why wouldn't he? What a sap he is if MJF comes out next week to try to cash his contract in and Mark Briscoe is nowhere to be found. Why wouldn't he show up and stop him from winning the championship? Doesn't make any sense. That's what I'm seeing at the end of the show next week. He might try, but I think Briscoe will be there to foil it. And then coming out of that, we'll get another match between MJF and Mark Briscoe. Because at that point, MJF will be so angry and so riled up, he'll accept whatever challenge Briscoe has for him. And maybe they do that match on Dynamite in 2 weeks. That's how I see things playing out next week. Do I think that we're getting a title change next week? No. No, I don't. Whether it's back to Moxley, God for fucking bid, or MJF cashing in successfully, I don't see either of those things happening next week. And hopefully the implosion of the Death Riders will follow suit after this. Now, they're not allowed at ringside next week. But when Moxley fails again to win the championship back, hopefully we will begin to see the implosion of that group. You saw Hangman after his match with Yuta. People were when they heard that match was announced, they probably had the same reaction I had, what are we doing here? But something positive could come from that if you see what Hangman said to Yuta after their match tonight. See, no one's coming out to save you. They don't give a shit about you. Plant that seed. Jon Moxley doesn't care about you. And the walls will hopefully begin to crumble in that group. And don't forget, also, Moxley has Darby waiting in the wings. Literally just waiting around. Apparently he has nothing to do. He's just staying. He's up there. He's down there. Next week they might show him eating a sandwich. I was going to say drinking a beer, but I think he's straight edge. So when Moxley fails, then we can move on to Moxley and Darby, and they can have their match. This was, on the whole, a very average episode of Dynamite. It did set up a big main event for next week. They kicked off another tournament, this time to decide number one contenders for the tag team titles. The biggest thing to me is they gave us that new wrinkle in the MJF Hurt Syndicate story, MJF and Bobby Lashley. It feels like we're going back to this again, but at least it makes things interesting now, because everything was going great, and now it's not. And you could kind of see things coming again, like the Hurt Syndicate and FTR, and if things continue to go south here, MJF is probably going to factor into that, and from that, maybe we'll get MJF and Lashley, and we'll get new tag team champions crowned. So I think things will start to happen on that front. But outside of that, it just, was a pretty ho-hum episode of Dynamite. It wasn't great. It wasn't bad, but it was a very average episode of Dynamite. It's the best way I could describe it. Let's take a look at the Twitter poll. What did you think of Dynamite from Chicago? 43% thumbs up, as compared to 57% thumbs down for tonight's show. At Solomonster is where you can vote. Let's get to your super chats. Again, the goal for Be the Booker was 400. We're right around 340 on the likes, so we got to try to get that up. Let me go back and make sure that I have this all queued up so I don't miss anybody. Very straightforward episode. In and out. It's the way it's been on these Dynamites. We got dried chicken. with us tonight. And he has a bunch of messages here. It says, Mother Wayne, Purple Rain. That's why I added the new Mother Wayne super chat. Also, all aboard. Rest in peace, Ozzy Osbourne. Passed away this week at 76. Did Ozzy. Also, why did WWE Tag Team Wrestling die? I mean, it didn't die on SmackDown. It's been pretty dead on Raw for a while, but SmackDown actually has signs of life in the tag team division. Tag team wrestling overall is just not really a priority for Triple H, though. And Bobby Lashley really has the fountain of youth on his side. He still looks very ageless. He does. He really, I mean, he looks the same. He looks the same as he did 10, 15 years ago. Not for nothing, Shelton does too. Duff's Vids is with us. Says, what does a condom and a coffin have in common? They both hold stiffs, but one's coming and one's going. It's clever. What do you call a swimming terrorist? A bath bomb. Bath bomb. What am I missing here? What's the difference between flowers and... Oh my God. It's actually a pretty good one. That's a pretty good one. Dried chicken without flavor. This guy here smiling has a message for The Rock. He says, don't go to SummerSlam. It's not worth it. Creative under Triple H is dry, stale, and bland. No need to add the flavor to the product. So saith naked dried chicken without flavor. At least we have a whole ass card at this point. I mean, we're a little over a week away. He also says, did you see Nia Jax laying the smackdown on Tiffany Stratton during WWE night at the Mets-Angels game on social media? Yeah, I talked about it on Monday night, as a matter of fact. Tiffany was there to throw out the first pitch again, which I don't believe she ever got to do because Nia, they played her music, and Nia came out on the mound to confront her. And the two of them brawled. Mr. Met and Mrs. Met had to get between them to try to separate them. So yes, I did see that. Dove's Vids, what do women and hand grenades have in common? When you pull the ring off, your house goes away. And what do you call a lesbian hippopotamus? A lick a lot of pussimus. See, I said that right. On the first try, I said that right. I was a little worried I was going to fuck that one up, but I think I stuck the landing on that one. Thank you, Doves. Edkin, NJ, does AEW owe it to its fans and talent to get better transparency from wrestlers regarding injuries? Osprey hiding an injury feels like a red flag. Well, again, we're assuming that everything that he said tonight was legit and on the up and up, that he's had this injury for almost a year and he hid it and didn't tell anybody. If that's true, then yes, that's a concern. At the same time, Tony Khan does not have ESP, and so he's not a mind reader. I think you want to have a conversation with talent. I think this is good for every promotion, frankly. Yeah, I think you want to have a conversation with talent to let them know that, look, if there's something that's bothering you, or if you are, feeling that something is wrong, or you're aware of there being an injury, you have to report it to us, right? Because it becomes a liability for the company as well. So I would hope that they're having these conversations with talent anyway, about having transparency about this stuff, because you can't have that. You just can't have that. And what was it? It was Adam Cole. I talked about Adam Cole at All In, who got hurt 2 days before All In, and he knew he was hurt. He knew that I might have a concussion. He could have kept his mouth shut and had the match with Kyle Fletcher and put him over, which I presume is what he was going to do. And then tell Tony Khan, look, I think I might be hurt. I think I need some time off. They had a conversation. He was very transparent with him about the way that he was feeling. I don't feel well. And ultimately, it was Tony who made the call to pull him from the match. And that's a good thing. You want the talent to feel like they can just be honest about this stuff, and they can go to their boss and say, you know what, I think I might be hurt, or I know I'm hurt, or I'm not feeling too great. Because there's a lot of wrestlers that won't do that. And there was a period of time in the wrestling business, and you hear, veterans talk about this stuff. Like, yeah, back then we don't tell people, like, if we get hurt, we don't get paid. And even if they did get paid, right? They don't want to say anything because they don't want to miss out on opportunities. They don't want to miss out on being on the road and making this payday and doing this and doing that. So, and maybe it's the macho thing too, where it's like, oh, I'm fine. It's not a big deal, right? But you do need to have transparency about this stuff, especially when it comes to like neck injuries. You don't want to fuck around with stuff like that. So I hope Osprey wasn't actively hiding an injury from them for almost a year, because that would be very stupid. But whether or not that's really what happened here, that we don't know. We don't know that right now. Duff's Vids, if a man and a woman need a marriage license to get married, what do two lesbians need? A liquor license. Well, you got to think for lesbians, don't you? I'm sensing a pattern here with Duff's. I think he's got a thing going on here. Duff's, I saw the dinosaur one too. Final oven mint. Or mint. Mint. Final oven mint. I said oven mint. Thank you for the variety streams, Orange Cassidy. When are you returning to Dynamite? Well, if I tell you, it won't be a surprise. I got to keep that on the down low. Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad I did the hippopotamus one right. I was a little worried there when I read it that I was going to butcher it. Yeah, Dubs Vids, he enjoys his HLA. We got formerly known as Dr. Scorpio with a $7 super chat. New name, new gimmick. Thanks, YouTube. Barely watching any wrestling at this year, he says. But watch Mox versus Hangman rematch ends in a screwy finish. We are going to get yet another rematch at All Out. No, we're not. All Out is in September. You think that they're going to drag this Moxley Hangman shit out to the end of September? Why would you even suggest that? Why even put that out there? Dev to Dust. Did you know the Long Island Expressway was supposed to lead to New Jersey? Robert Moses wanted to make highway in Midtown connecting the I-495 to the I-95 in New Jersey, but people rejected it. I did not know that. I don't know what I'm supposed to do with this information, but that's actually something I did not know. Dropping knowledge on me here is Dev to Dust. Look at this. Some fake New Yorker I am. How did I not know that? Thank you, sir. Be calm, C. Booker. CM Punk's brawl-out situation is still wrong, but I do understand how he was feeling. Coworkers and management can take to hell quick. That is true. Except I've never tried to attack my coworkers. Big difference. In WWE Wrestling and Gaming, prediction for the AEW title rematch next week. I just gave it a little while ago. Hangman is going to hold on to the championship. I think that MJF very likely is going to at least tease an attempt at cashing in his contract, and Mark Briscoe is going to foil that attempt as revenge for MJF talking about his family and rejecting his challenge that he laid out tonight. Briscoe will get his revenge. And then Hangman can move on to whatever's next. And I don't know what that is, but as long as it doesn't involve Jon Moxley and the Death Riders, then I don't really care. We've got formerly known as Dr. Scorpio. To be fair, they dragged this Moxley Death Riders for almost a year, which no one asked for. So why not? Because it's a terrible idea. That's why. You're not wrong, but I'm telling you why. I have no interest in seeing it. Be calm, see clearly. My ex saw a flirtation post about Kevin Knight, and he said that that's why he thought I was cheating. He's an insecure man-child. Well, that's why you got to be careful. You got to be more covert about these things. Some people get very jealous. Some people get very jelly. Duff's Vids is caught up. He says, I'm live with Solo. For a second, I thought they said I'm live in Solo. I said, no, you're not. Don't go spreading rumors now. Dry Chicken says it's time for the good son scenario. Save one, let the other one go. AJ Francis or Evil? Is there really a good son in this scenario? I don't see one. Where's the good son? You left him out. I don't know how to answer this question. I really don't. I don't know how to answer this question. I'd probably go AJ Francis and let Evil go. But I don't say that with any great degree of enthusiasm. But I'll keep AJ and let Evil go. Hangman against Zack Sabre Jr. is the match in the UK. With 2 herniated discs in his neck, that doesn't sound very wise. I don't know. I mean, Osprey and Zack Sabre, they've had a gazillion matches. I would hope they could do something different. Anyway, Be Calm C Booker. Kind of updated his name there. Thank you, brother. Thank you for that $2. That's all you. I'm going to be live with you here again on Friday night. We'll be talking SmackDown. We have 2 more SmackDowns to go until Summer. So 2 more SmackDowns and 1 Monday Night Raw before we get to SummerSlam, which is coming up quick. Not this weekend, but the following weekend. I'll be covering both nights, of course. But if you missed any of the content this week, again, we had the Podcast on Sunday, episode 921. We had a TNA Slammiversary review. Monday Night Raw. If you missed Tuesday Night Titans with myself and JD over on his channel last night, we had a great show. The audience retention on that show has been tremendous. So thank you to everybody who's been hanging out with us on Tuesdays. Of course, we got Dynamite tonight. And yeah, plenty of content to keep you busy. I hope you're enjoying it all. We'll try again for Be the Booker on Friday. We didn't hit the goal tonight, but we shall try again on Friday. Until then, be well, be calm, be well, stay safe, and I will see you back here for more Sound Off live here on YouTube. Hit that like button on your way out. I'll see you Friday night for SmackDown.